So, we just got off of Claudio's favorite anime.
And apparently mine too now.
Yeah, you and everybody else in my thread. God damn it, Mode Wondershot, what have you unleashed?
It is what it is. We're doing whatever we can to distract ourselves from what sits in front of us in Y2K hell.
Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to find a lot more than terrible anime pastiches, because there's, like, a lot of stuff left to go in this dungeon.
Such as the enthralling item management.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I should probably cut that out. Unfortunately, I can't cut this out.
We're here for the whole thing. Your audience is with you for the long haul.
Epilepsy warning, y'all.
Incidentally, what was behind those other doors? Do we go back to that at some point, or?
Yeah, we do go back there at some point, but it's later in the video.
Sure.
In the meantime, I kind of want to check out and see what's down here. There's some lady down there. I don't know what she's doing. Let's blow up some rocks, see if we can find a way down there.
Well, there are many uninteresting obstacles between you and her, so...
Yeah, like that monster who seems to be very courteously avoiding her.
Gengar wants nothing to do with her, I suppose.
We are running pretty low on health, though, unfortunately, because we ran through all that... I don't know, what is it? Lava? It's too pink to be lava.
I'm just gonna go with industrial waste, because that seems appropriately 90s.
Oh god, you're right. I was going to say one of those weird colored things of ketchup.
Well, at least this isn't like RoboCop, where you go through it and have end up having Alex melt partway in a way that gives me nightmares for a little while.
I'm glad you watched that film. It's actually a pretty good film, overall. My favorite thing about it is that the structure is overall very similar if you watch it forward to back and backward to forward. Have you ever heard about that?
I did not, but I will have to reanalyze it that way.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. It's one of those things where, like, the more you unpack RoboCop, and I say this totally unironically, the better it gets.
Oh yeah, RoboCop there's a lot going for that movie. Your opinions on Paul Verhoeven may vary, but when it comes to really aggressive, gleeful satire, I think he's got it nailed.
That's the thing about that film. It's so good at being satire that it kind of stops being satire.
Well, the best satire is an effective reflection regardless of the time period. Speaking of effective reflections, that was a very nice Claudio hit.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, remember how I was telling you that Claudio just kind of chumps the crap out of regular enemies because he can cleave through everybody?
Well, effective use of time energy is certainly helping out there, but by any chance, have we revisited the possibility of whether time energy usage is more effective on Alex's basic attack?
I really have not, but given how little time energy you have, like how strict the mapping is between that to how much time it would normally be going through if you weren't using it, I don't know. Alex's basic attack is already just so dreadfully slow, you know? Like, we talked about that before, how you could just, like, cut off the first 5 seconds of it or whatever, and it wouldn't change your usage of it.
Trick shot!
So, I think, honestly, I could get maybe, like, 1 second or something of slowed down Alex record, and then I'm just, oops, out of time energy.
I suppose the next level, coordination required by Y2K, it would involve only using time energy in short bursts and kind of getting used to the fact that its slowdown would be slightly inconsistent with your own timing in order to hit those red and small yellow zones much more frequently.
Which is exactly what I try to do.
Oh! We're back.
Yep. Okay, so mimics in game design. What I was just getting after this game before is how it seems to just like actively punish me for exploring in some cases.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I think in a lot of ways it does, but it's like they want you to explore the environment, so why put mimics just there? Yeah, there goes 15 PP down the drain. The mimic has a metric shit ton of health. Like, look at that.
Oh boy.
You may notice that that's about as much damage as I did to the golden alpaca back in the day.
I mean, I understand mimics needing to be somewhat tough, but again, this game already has problems with tedium.
Oh, yeah. I don't like mimics as a game design element because, like I was saying before, it, like, actively punishes you for exploring the environment.
Yeah. Also, what was happening there?
Alex's EP strike ability, which, because his crit chance is still 69, does like 40 damage at minimum.
Huh.
Yeah. If only I had more PP. But anyway, I cut out like about 4 minutes of that fight. So that was pretty cool. But back to what I was saying. I feel like mimics are... You know, mimics are just inherently kind of shifty design because they punish a player for looking around the environment and exploring.
Yeah.
Especially when the criteria for what qualifies as a good chest or a bad chest is not something that comes down to, like, you know, it doesn't come down to some kind of test of the player's observation or patience, right? Like, if you want to talk about good mimic design, I would probably say Dark Souls, because in Dark Souls, the challenge of fighting mimics doesn't come from you getting your ass beat just for opening them. If you're patient and actually whack them a couple times, or if you just look at them for a while, you can see them breathing, right?
Right.
Like, you know ahead of time that they're mimics.
They do actually have tells.
Yes, it rewards the patient, careful player, which is what Dark Souls is kind of all about.
Funnily enough, there was, I think the very first mimics, unless I was mistaken, were actually in Dragon Quest. And interestingly enough, the game actually did give you a counter to them in the form of a spell that you could use on chests that, at a fairly small MP cost, would just confirm whether or not they contained a mimic. And,
oh, so it's like a detect evil or whatever?
Yeah. And so... While that aspect of it was, you know, maybe just one extra step, it sort of did reinforce the fact that, yes, treasure chests were occasionally a trap, but you did have a way of dealing with them, or at least avoiding them.
Yeah. And that was the thing about going back to the Dark Souls example. Dark Souls had other ways of dealing with mimics. You know, the challenge of fighting a mimic once you woke it up was because mimics were weird and could do hurricane kicks at you and shit like that. But you could also just throw the Lloyd's Talisman at them if you knew that trick.
Spoilers for Dark Souls 1, I guess.
Oh, that's not a spoiler. That game's been out for like 9 years.
I think you made the joke a bit earlier too, so I'm just getting my turn in.
Maybe I did.
Anyway, no, so yeah, we're seeing, I would say that's definitely a problem that comes up in games like, say, Megaten, or I'm thinking of Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne and Digital Devil Saga specifically, where because those games are rather lethal in their own right, running into mimics, especially in circumstances where you might not be expecting them, is usually quite a bit more problematic, especially given the game not offering any kind of tools for investigating whether they could possibly be where you're looking.
Yeah, and that's very similar to the problem that's afforded by this game, except that this game somehow manages to be even more spiteful, because if you go through the actual fight with the Mimic, you know how it always says some stupid shit whenever they attack?
Uh-huh.
Well, you know, I think for the Mimic, it says something along the lines of, well, this is what you get for being so greedy. Yeah, okay, I'm being greedy for opening up chests like I've opened up dozens of chests before over the course of this game, right?
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yeah. Not a very good look there, Y2K.
I just don't understand how a game can be that actively spiteful toward me.
I feel that it's honestly just a combination of that spite you're describing, but also just laziness.
Yeah, that's kind of what I gathered. You know, it's always fun to say tee hee 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 hee, look how much we pulled one over on the poor player, but that's not really the kind of RPG I want to play.
And speaking of laziness, here's a scenario in which you're basically given a solution to a puzzle twice and have to complete it both times because, sure.
Oh, you noticed that too, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really unimpressed by that one. You know, you just basically drop through these 3 spots, and eventually you get to the point where you can hit the requisite switches and... get back out. Of course, it always punishes you for following the solution the way that the game wants you to do it, because you have to walk through the pink ketchup, right?
Right.
So, you know, I'm actively taking health penalties to my entire party, and there's jack shit I can do about that. At least out of combat.
Yeah, and the way it's sort of setting up this entire mechanic of having the floors of the dungeon be accessible from one to the next. Also, what is... I suppose, yeah, you got the key so that you could actually head back out this way where you couldn't before. It's... It's...
That whole thing was to fight that mimic. There was literally no other reason to go down there except to get a middling piece of equipment.
Oh. I thought there was... I thought I saw a notification for a key there. Well.
I did get a key earlier. That's what allowed me to open up the key going to the conversation about... Gosh, what'd you call it? Magical Girl Sisterhood of Spring?
Yep.
Yeah. I did have to use a dungeon key to get into that. I believe there's another dungeon key in one of these 2 side areas.
Five for 5. Let's see if Mimicry sees you out again.
No, at this point, my spidey senses were tingling, and I was 100% sure one of these was a mimic. So I started trying to figure out ways that I could retop my health. Because, you know, they don't do a lot of damage, they're just really annoying, but still I don't want to have to use one of my 18 smelling salts.
I feel like at this point the true strategy is to open them all, and when you hit the mimic, just Alt-Tab out of the game, close the window, and then restart your save so that you don't open it.
Oh gosh. Well, that would require that I spent even more time with this awful game. Can't have that.
It is what it is, I suppose.
And let's see what is in chest number 5. Oh, hey, thank you for taking off another one of my healths. Oh, hey, another shitty piece of equipment.
Sure.
Yeah, that was totally worth that.
I'm actually trying to parse from the shape of the room if there's any particular meaning to the layout of the rocks on the floor, because it's slightly off.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Also, I found this area, which is kind of special.
I'm thinking it would be sort of a curious thing if, say, Killer 7 style, the specific layout of the... Okay.
Yeah.
No, the specific layout of those rocks ended up coming into play somehow later. But no, I'm seeing how this is supposed to work.
Oh yeah, you might think that. So it's like, okay, I can get the chest now, right?
Right?
Nope, can't get the chest.
That's because you're thinking one step too far ahead there, because putting Panda down on the Switch and having it work is quite sensible, honestly, but I believe the intended solution is to just have Alex stand on the Switch and then use Dolly.
Oh yeah, you're right. Maybe I could do that, but this is one of the things with the way that this game does color schemes. Did it look to you like there was a significant height difference between those two platforms?
The only indicator that I saw was the fact that the laser targeting that you used for Dolly was definitely going into the wall as opposed to actually reaching the chest overhead.
But, maybe they could communicate that a little bit better, because I thought what I proposed was a pretty sensible solution.
And it was. It was just smarter than the game intended.
Well, I'm smarter than the average bear, I guess. How dare I try to attempt solutions to the puzzles the game gives me? I'm running pretty low on health, so we're going to starve down some BLTs. I've only got $4,000 to burn.
Sounds good.
I'm kind of worried that there's going to be a boss fight here, like, as soon as I go up there. So...
That's a fair worry, considering.
Yeah, I mean, this game got awfully nice with healing items, right?
Well, it's...
Like in the past 2 episodes?
Yeah, it's been the case that there hasn't been a terribly significant challenge as far as just over health traversal, and this dungeon seems to be overcompensating for that somewhat, frankly, because between the poison floors and the overall length of it and the sheer number of encounters you've gotten into, to say nothing of the Mimic, it's pretty obvious that at some point they looked back and went, oh yeah, we haven't really had a really meaningful combat challenge for a while, and now we're going to have a traversal challenge.
Well, I guess that was what the Mimic was supposed to be, was that combat challenge, but he wasn't hard, he just had too much health.
Yeah, again, the whole facet of the game seems to be that the combat challenges are less about execution or strategic thinking so much as they are just sheer endurance.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, I spend a little bit belaboring the point of getting over to that other platform, even though I totally don't see the possum?
Yeah, I'm still thinking giant rat, but...
Well, I mean, there's not much of a difference, especially if you live where I live.
Fair enough.
Do they have possi up there?
Well, we did have a pretty long-running TV show based on that concept, so yeah.
It's okay. I know about possums from TV.
You should absolutely watch the Red Green Show if you haven't.
Yeah, you'll have to send it to me sometime.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube now, I think.
Oh, good. I love when stuff gets put on YouTube. Again, I kind of did not realize that there's another possum off-screen. I had to go back and look.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a hard view from where I'm sitting as well.
No, look, I think that's about where I figured it out, because I happened to catch a glimpse of it. I don't know what that was about. Past me's kind of dumb, isn't he?
You're trying to put on a show for an audience. It's completely understandable.
Oh, I guess.
What I'm kind of curious about is whether there'd be the possibility of just dropping the amplifier down onto those rocks from the bridge above, but I really doubt it.
Oh, I tried that. That's exactly what I was doing. I can't drop it on Gengar either.
That said, I don't believe we've seen any instances outside of, I think, Panda, of the random encounters actually being affected by any of Alex's field abilities.
No, they don't seem to. Though Sammy did use Dolly as a weapon for the, 5 minutes that we had her, remember?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily counts. Anyway, once we get down there, we can take out some of these Easter Island heads and pull us up a shortcut to the entrance to the room. There's not really a whole lot up there that's worth going back to, but there are a couple chests down here.
Ultimately, my only guess is that it was about giving you access to this floor, because, yeah, that's where the other switch is.
Oh, hey, another one of these.
Fantastic. Ugh.
Remember how much fun we had fighting them before?
Oh, You're gonna be a nice guy to me, Diacorn, and tell me that you edited this one down too, right?
Yeah, I did actually.
Excellent.
I did actually edit it. Because again, I'm not going to make y'all watch like 5 minutes of these fights. So this is Chandra. I did finally figure out how to change our party members. She has various stances, each of which actually costs us a turn to go into. I don't know why that's a thing. This is her basic attack. It's something.
Okay, so it's rhythm-based, if somewhat hard to parse the first time.
Yeah.
I like that it kind of makes sense, though, and compared to the likes of Camera Boy over here, because really just pressing the buttons doesn't seem to mean as much, where the hula hoop, as in real life, does require a certain amount of rhythm.
For our trouble, we get an Occupy Bank Street sign.
Uh-huh.
Given that we're never using Rory again, it's not hugely helpful, but thanks for playing, game.
Yep. Thanks for playing all of us.
Oh, hey, Gengar. I forgot you were down here. One thing I am appreciative of is just how many different enemy types we're finally getting. Like, it only took them 7 hours, but they're bringing out the cavalry finally.
Yeah. I'm seeing things like between the Goat Man, the dude in the trash can with the pylons and the stop sign, that they are definitely still trying to crib from Earthbound's well.
Yeah, the trash can pylon guy was very, very Earthbound in particular, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, whatever. So, eventually, I remember that we have these, and Chandra has a skill called Share Item that lets you apply an item to everybody in the party.
Hey.
It's kind of good when you have an item that restores 100% of all your stats.
You know, that's a pretty decent design element, so...
This is for you.
Again, with not quite knowing what else is in Chandra's design that could undermine it, I can certainly appreciate the fact that there's some effective choices made in what sort of character she is.
Well, so far, my main issue with Chandra's design is that it requires a turn to switch stances. It's almost like it punishes you for trying to adapt to the flow of combat, you know? Like, if you actually look at how that affects Chandra's DPS over time, in order to be maximally flexible, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah.
The last RPG I remember playing that was turn-based that did that was probably Shadowrun Hong Kong, if you remember playing that game.
I did not, actually, so go ahead.
Oh, well, there's a fighter in that game who has a stance system, and you can actually change stances as a free action. Some of them will change how you do stun damage versus regular damage, how often you crit, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are clear trade-offs to each one, and it's all about using the right stance at the right time, because if you stay in a stance for a while, you can actually do combo strikes. So you go through, like, strike A, B, and C, and they always have a fixed damage multiplier and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a really interesting system. I kind of wish they did something like that with Chandra, because I would like to have more of an excuse to use her besides just the share item thing, which seems incredibly fucking good by itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's enough to earn her a permanent spot on the party.
Strictly speaking, what I might say is that depending on whether your objective based on her design is to maintain one stance for a long time to accrue benefits, or change stances frequently to accrue benefits, or maybe just avoid problems, you could probably build it such that, say, when she's going into a battle, she has the option of switching to a stance for free right at the start, and then if you're going the first route, you say, oh, she'll get benefits for switching stances every turn just to ensure that she's always doing something different and incorporate maybe a little bit of chaos that you have to manage into the character.
Yeah.
Or you go with the route you described with Shadowrun and say, no, the idea is when you switch a stance, we want to rather incentivize someone kind of sticking with the same game plan through the whole battle when Chandra's in a stance, so build up bonuses or impose a malice for trying to switch a stance at the wrong time.
But that's the thing. The game doesn't actively reward the player for sticking to one stance. You know, this is one of these things where it's like, they have part A of the equation, which is that it punishes you for switching stances too much because you lose the benefits of your stance in your turn for changing it. But also, they just kind of forgot to reward you for staying in a stance for a while.
Yeah. Again, it's just one of those things where the idea was partially there and nothing was done with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I can sort of understand wanting to keep it simple just for purposes of what is ultimately meant to be a pretty basic homage to a JRPG, but what seems to be left behind in this case is that even for very simple JRPGs, the likes of the Paper Mario, there's still a fair amount of depth to how the mechanics work, or there's a lot of detail that's considered about what makes characters effective, or what makes battles last longer, or easier, or what players have to deal with strategically in completing any given random encounter or boss fight or what have you. And that's actually something that people like myself do enjoy about JRPGs, that even if they are pretty simple, there's still an artistry to how characters are designed and battles are designed and everything you have to deal with is designed.
Exactly. There's a lot to be said for a game that gets a lot of depth and mileage out of very simple mechanics. One good example I can think of as far as mainstream RPGs go is actually Fire Emblem, and I don't remember if we've talked about that before. Like, how much damage you do is always going to be your attack minus their defense. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the way that they expand on that concept and the way that they take simple numbers and create an entire system out of that, that's all still very elegant and easy to comprehend if you just look at the numbers. That's very interesting. That's a good design.
Yeah, and I mean, let's take a look at Pokemon for a minute, because that game's about as simple as it gets. It's really explicitly designed so that kids can pick it up and get into it, but the math behind how everything works, while fairly rudimentary, means that it also has a pretty expansive competitive scene, and a deep understanding of the mechanics can yield rewards for even very experienced players.
Yeah, and I think that's also something to be said for various other weirdly sort of popular outliers that pride themselves on simplicity among certain genres, like Super Smash Bros. For fighting games in general. You know, Super Smash Bros. Is a party game that happens to have a competitive scene.
We have now stumbled upon
a boombox.
A haunted boombox.
Haunted by the spirit of... Well, give it a minute.
Well...
Ugu Sammy.
I hear the theme, so...
I guess they forgot to voice this cutscene.
I want to know what happens because I feel as though there's a decent possibility that the voice actors revolted.
Oh yeah, they just said, fuck this, we're out. Naturally, Alex turns this into a Sammy thing.
Now, I almost do wish this was voice acted because I'd...
Oh yeah, I want to hear them read these awful lines.
Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah, good eye there.
Yeah, I was 100% sure that was like a dude trapped back there. It was like, hey buddy, you want out?
I think we'll see if it plays into what comes, but if it's a completely forgotten detail, I completely understand.
Hey, did she have that mic when they first introduced her?
Nope.
I didn't think she did.
Someone just mic'd her up as part of the cutscene.
I think her thing is that she's supposed to be doing karaoke or something.
She's haunting the boombox.
And she's apparently a fan of Oasis.
Okay, so I know Wonderwall's old, but how old is it?
Like 2003, 2004-ish. It's a pretty old song.
I know, but still
because it came out after.
Still not 1999.
No, but I don't know what album it was on specifically. I'm not a huge Oasis person, but I know it came out long after More and Gory did.
See, what I want is this game to actually reference something like Curve or maybe Massive Attack's Unfinished Sympathy, because these were songs from the 90s that I'd recognize and probably a decent number of other people would recognize.
Well, I mean, Curve's work was mostly throughout the 90s, and Unfinished Sympathy was like 92. 91.
92.
Was it 92?
I'm pretty sure it was 92 because I think there was some kind of poll where someone voted it most popular song of 92 or something like that.
I'm somehow not surprised by that. I figured it was like 91, 92 because Mezzanine was their third album, and then that came out in 95.
Right.
Yeah. So I would like to say it was, yeah, I think it was probably about 92. So anyway, yeah, it turns out that Shane G. Irving, or whatever their name was, is in fact the right person and was on the right track. This is not Sammy.
That's a good pun right there, buddy.
It does turn out that we can give this mixtape to one of two people. They clearly said, we don't know which answer is the right answer, so isn't that something? I love when games do that and explicitly state that there are things I can do.
Yeah, especially when, it's trying to bait that second playthrough out of you, but that is not what's happening here, is it, Diacorn?
Oh, absolutely not.
Good, thank you.
I'm going to give it to the dude who didn't run her over.